Okay, so you've got home, you've got a brand new locomotive and you're sitting there. You've applied the detail into the locomotive, you've applied the nameplates, you've applied all the different bits that's come in the pack. You're sitting there running it around your layout and thinking, how could this look better? Well, today I'm going to show you how to weather a locomotive. Now this is my method of weathering locomotives, but everyone has their own method. The best way is to try different methods, see which one you find comfortable and which effects please you most. Now here's one I've done last night, which is a similar method that we're going to use today. Now this uses something called Carr's weathering powders. Here, simply brushed onto your locomotive, and then once I've brushed them on, I've also gone over with an airbrush and I've applied a coat of varnish to seal them on. And what I've used is I've basically just used the muddy sort of colours to brush down the locomotive, leaving a finish where the muck's been dragged down the side of the locomotive, if you will, by the rain. It's also had mud and some slight rust applied to the chassis, more rust to the bogies than the fuel tanks, but still a slight amount there, and some more muck around the exhausts, as well as a liberal covering over the roof. Now that's the sort of effect we're going to be going for today, but as well as that, I'm going to be weathering this one today, and this is going to be from the same sort of era as this, but this one's been long without a repaint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some more rust to the body, dragged down from some of the grills, the nameplates and whatnot, and that's going to be pretty simple to apply, as I will show you. Now a few tools that I use myself when I'm weathering include the airbrush, which I've shown you. It also includes disposable gloves. Now I use these so that I don't get mucky hands all over the locomotive. Other tools I use, a range of model brushes available at your model shop. Just go in there and ask them for some model brushes, they don't cost too much. PVC tape and a pair of scissors. Now this is an optional thing that I like to do when I'm weathering, is to, if you can look on the front there, if you can see it, mask out the windows where the windscreen wipers have cleaned the muck from the windows, and that really does apply, that does help with some of the detail. I use Johnson baby wipes. This not only cleans the locomotive, but I'll show you what else it can do in a few minutes. There's the gloves. I also use a piece of wood, preferably something without a grain. I've got a smooth piece of laminate flooring here, which was left over from when we laid the floor in the kitchen. Now what this helps you to do, you get to put the locomotive on it, and it saves you from touching the locomotive, as you can just turn it round to get to different parts of the locomotive or the wagon, whatever you're weathering. It also allows you something so when you're finished and taking the locomotive away, you can brush all the powder off, put it in your bag to reuse it another time. That way you waste less. A bit cost effective really. So what we're going to start doing, I'm going to put some of these tools aside. Okay, I've put some of these tools aside. Now what we're going to do first is we're going to put it on there a second. We're going to put our gloves on. Okay, so we've got our gloves on. Now the next step is to take the baby wipes. Now the effect that what I'm going to show you with these is it not only cleans the locomotive, but by taking this and going top to bottom on the body sides with it, it will leave a slight residue, giving streaks down the side of the locomotive, as I've done here, which when you've put your powders on will give the effect that the muck has been washed down slightly by the rain as it's hit the side of the locomotive under rain and also dragged it down the body side. I'm just going to go top to bottom with this. I'm going to do this both sides. Now you don't need to worry about doing a chassis of this. If your chassis is starting to get a bit of dust and you want to clean that, just go over it with a brush and brush any bits of dust out. Once I've done the body side, I'm going to lay it down on this piece of wood, go from the centre of the roof down to the edges, and the same on the nose. I'm going to turn the board around. So as I can do the same across the other side. Okay, so that's that stage out of the way. Now we're just going to leave that to dry a few seconds. Okay. Okay, so now we've left that for a few minutes to dry, we're going to take our first weathering powder. Now the first one I'm going to use is a dark brownish sort of colour. There we go. It's supposed to be more of a coal dust, but it's got more of a browny tinge, so I like to use this for the general road grime that's left to film over the locomotive over time. So we're going to open that bag. I'm just going to basically put out a little pile of this just there to use. Okay. Seal up the bag, put it to one side, and I'm going to take a brush. Now this one is a size 2 Revel brush, which is what I'm going to use for this. You can use any size, it depends what size you prefer to use for this. I'm going to dip it in there and just go along the roof line and just dab it across. Now don't be afraid to use too much of a powder, as it will brush off as we go along. Now once I've gone along the roof line, I'm going to go into each of these grills and just brush it in where it catches in there. Also pushing some more into these on the roof line. Okay, so that's the grills done out of the way. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to gently sweep some of this off the roof where it's caught. Okay. Now I'm going to gently drag the brush down the side of the locomotive. I'm going to do this ever so gently so I leave streaks of the powder left behind. Now you'll begin to notice this, the dust will begin to gather in different places, such as the creases around the doors, the handles, which will start to pick out the details slowly for you. Obviously as you go along you will find that you'll be brushing some more off top, so you'll have to go back down the body sides. Okay. Now once I've done this I'm going to basically use the same colour and just do the chassis. Using the same downward strokes. Just pressing it into the detail around the bogies, getting each of the springs, brakes, everything covered. Okay, so once we finish that side, we're going to turn it around and we're basically going to do exactly the same to the other side. Okay, now I've got the other side. We're basically going to do exactly the same that we've done on the first side. Okay, so once we've done both sides, we're then going to move on to weathering the end. Now that's more or less about the same as we've done on the sides. Just going to take the brush and dab it across the top of the nose, and then drag it down. I'm going to do the same for the roof, starting at the centre line on the cab. And then we're just going to dab it in around the windows, then go back to the cab roof and whatnot, and just brush it away again. And not forgetting to do the fronts of the bogies as well as the pipes, brake pipes and whatnot. And the same with the roof. We're going to start in the middle, dabbing it along. And then we're going to do exactly the same as we've done with the nose, and just drag it down towards the sides, very lightly rubbing it around the grills. Turn around the model and do the other cab end. Now just very gently sweeping up the leftover dust, and I'm going to use a piece of card to catch that and put that back in the packet for later. Now as you may see, you may have some more flecks of dust on the body side from the roof. Now the way we're going to get rid of that is very gently blowing on the model, very gently, just to get rid of unwanted dust particles. And once again turn the model around to get to the other side. Okay, so that's our first first colour. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to take that over to the airbrush booth. We're going to give that a light covering of varnish just to fix this colour in place and give that plenty of time to dry. Okay. Once we've given that time to dry, we're going to go on to using the next colour, which will be a rust colour. But first we're going to give it a coat of varnish to seal this, so that if we make any mistakes with this and have to rub it off, we'll still have our finish of the muddy, dusty sort of colour left over the track dirt. Okay, we're at the spray booth now. I've got the locomotive over here, rested on two pieces of scrap wood that I found laying around. Now what I'm using here is a round match paint. It's the varnish and easily available from House Models. I've thinned it down into a pot, 1 part paint to 1 part varnish, sorry, to 1 part acrylic thinners, which are also available from House Models. And what I've done is I have an airbrush here running off a compressor. Now I'm using a dual action gravity fed airbrush, that's all switched on. Screw this bit back on. Still wearing my gloves so I don't get any varnish on my hands. And I've got another spare piece of wood for a start. I'm just going to check that paint's running, the varnish is running freely. Okay, so that's now running freely. What I'm just going to do is I'm going to start the air about here and run side to side across the locomotive, applying very thin coats.